Hi, Nines. Welcome back. So today we are going to look more in depth of the somatic nervous system. So we would have looked at central nervous system, looked at peripheral, and as you can see from this diagram, the somatic nervous, oh goodness, let me just change that. The somatic nervous system is part of the peripheral nervous system. Um, Make sure you've either highlighted or colored the box. So now we're looking at the somatic nervous system. So there's a lot to it, but we'll slowly work through it. So hopefully it makes sense. So the somatic nervous system, what it does, it carries messages from the central nervous system to the body. So between each other. It is specifically responsible for voluntary movements. So what that means is, so I've done some annotations and I want you guys to add these on your notes as well. So voluntary means that you're consciously doing that particular action. So you're taking control over it. While involuntary, on the other hand, means it's just naturally happening. So it's responsible for voluntary movements such as that of skeletal muscles. So skeletal muscles is an example where skeletal muscles are muscles that are attached to your bones or your skeleton. Um, so obviously when we do movements, when we're consciously moving, we are also moving the muscles as well. Uh, but in comparison to the heart muscles, we are not controlling it. It is involuntarily happening. So that's the difference between the two. So you need to make sure you know the difference between voluntary and involuntary. Um, the sensory organs are part of the somatic nervous system. So obviously you guys know we have 5 sensory organs. So the sensory organs have these receptors. So receptors are things that detect certain things, which are known as stimulus, um, and detect any changes. So these changes stimulate a message which is sent to the brain for a response. So these our sensory organs will detect something, and once they've detected that message or the stimulus, they send a message to the brain going, "Hey man, I detected it." So that's what that is about. So you need to be familiar with just you need to be familiar with the 5 organs. We're going to go in much depth later on, but this table is super important. Okay. So obviously your hearing is done by your ears. The stimulus is sound because that's what you hear. There are receptors in your ears called auditory receptors. If you think about it, auditory sounds like audio. That's how you know what type of receptor it is because we're hearing audio from in our ears. So there are auditory receptors that detect sound or vibrations, and they'll send the message to the brain, and the brain can identify what that particular sound is. Your nose obviously detects the sense is smell. It detects chemicals, so odorous chemicals in the air. So what detects it are olfactory receptors. So olfactory receptors in your nose will detect these chemicals in the air. If you think about, let's say, our skin, so the sense is touch, and this organ is as skin. So for example, our hands, we can detect heat, pressure, movement. For example, if we put this on, if we hold a hot cup of water, um, the stimulus is the temperature, the hot temperature. Then your hands, the nerves, so in particular the thermoreceptors in your hands. So think about thermoregulation, thermostat, all related to temperature. So the thermoreceptors in your skin will send a message to your brain going, "Oh mate, you're holding a very hot cup of water. Let's get our hands away from it to keep us away from danger or burning ourselves." And you've got the pain receptors. So obviously pain receptors are involved with that as well. And mechanoreceptors. So there's multiple receptors in your skin that detect different types of things and send that message to your brain. In your mouth, you've got taste or chemical receptors, which detect the chemical substances in the food or the things we consume. and obviously the sense is taste. Our eyes detect light, that's a stimulus. And the receptor, there are photoreceptors. If you think about it, photo, camera, use your eyes to take a photo. They're all related, and photo is linked to light. So photoreceptors in your eyes will detect the light and send the message to your brain. So make sure you're copying this down as we go. And now we're about to go into a bit more depth of each of these organs. So let's go now. So this is what your skin looks like. If I were to cut your skin and get it put under a microscope, there are different layers inside your skin. As you guys can see that there's pressure receptors and movement receptors at the bottom. And you've got light contact receptors, pain receptors. The pain receptors are at the very top. Heat receptors and cold receptors are a bit more further down. So there are all these layers in your skin that will detect different types of stimuluses, which is pretty important. So be familiar with what type of receptors are found inside the skin. The next one is eyesight. So obviously eyes are very important to see. So your brain will interpret what you see and be like, okay, this is an image of, etc. So there are these photoreceptors in your retina that respond to the light stimuli by sending signals to your optic nerve. So there's a nerve called an optic nerve in your eye that will send the message from your eyes to your brain so your brain can interpret it. So I'll show you what your eye actually looks like. So this is what happens. So let me just give me one, guys. So what happens is light enters into your eye through the cornea. This is your pupil, and this entire thing is your lens, into your eye, and an image is formed here at the back of your eye, and that is passed on by your optic nerve to your brain. So that's what's happening inside each of your eyes. So let me just get rid of this, and let's go back to. So this is just a kind of like a flow chart. All right, so there are photoreceptors in your eye that detects the light. The photoreceptors located in your retina are called rods and cones. You may be familiar with that, you may not be, but it's okay. So rods and cones, these are the two types of receptors in your eye. Your rods allow you to see black and white in dim light. So when the light isn't as bright, the rods will detect the black and white in whatever you see. And the cones are responsible for your color vision. So the cones, those receptors will allow you to see color, red, orange, whatever you see. So those two work together to give you a full image. Okay, so there are different structures of the eye. So you've got the cornea, lens, retina, pupil, and iris. So if we look at our eyes, the black part in the middle, that is our pupil. So that's actually a hole. That's how the light enters into your eye. The color that you see, so for example, my eyes are dark brown, that is actually a ring of muscle. So obviously you know that when you go outside or come inside, your pupils would dilate or constrict. What's happening is the muscles are tightening and loosening to control the amount of light going inside your pupil. So if we look at iris, it is a ring of muscle controlling the amount of light entering your eye. In a dark room, when you're in a dark room, your iris will relax, your pupils will look bigger as it's trying to get as much light possible. So obviously in a dark room, you can't really see much. So you're trying to get as much light inside to try and distinguish what's happening. So your iris will relax and your pupils will be much bigger to make sure more light enters. So retina is at the back of your eye. That's where light is focused. And that's, like I said, retina is where your two photoreceptors are, your rods and cones. Your lens is so behind your pupil, is the lens. It is a clear jelly-like structure, and that allows the light to bend and focus. And the cornea is what's on the outside here. It's a clear outer skin of the eye. It is curved, so it allows light approaching the eye to be bent towards the pupil. So we want it to, the light that's coming in, to go straight directly in to the back of your eye towards the retina where the photoreceptors are. So like I said here, so this part here, that's your pupil. That's the black part that you see. This part here on the outside, those are the muscles, and that is the color of your eyes. So if you look at the picture here, see here the pupil in the middle and the iris on the outside. So the colored part is actually a muscle, and that's what's constricting and relaxing. And light enters, hitting. So this is all. This part is the retina, as you see, and an image is formed here. The cornea is just the outside of everything. So yeah, so those are the different parts of your eye, and this is just a flow chart of what happens inside your eye as the light enters. What I want you guys to do is at the end, after watching this video, I want everyone to you've probably seen a TikTok as well, but I want everyone to close their eyes, just one eye, have your camera up, and record what happens when you open your eye. So you should see your pupil change its shapes. Don't flash a light into it, you don't need to, as long as your eye is closed, and then press record, open your eye, and then see what happens to your pupil. And I want everyone to upload the video into OneNote. So I want to see, it's better if you do it in a brighter room. If you want, you can go outside and do it. But make sure there's enough light so you can see the pupil change its shape. All right, the next one is nose. So obviously we detect smell. There are gaseous molecules in the air, which is what we breathe in. There are chemoreceptors which detect these molecules, and there's a nerve called olfactory nerve in your nose, and once one of these molecules are detected by the receptors, a message is sent to the brain. Because if you think about it, let's say even before you get food, how many of you guys start salivating? Like if you line up in KFC drive-through, I start salivating from the get-go because of the smell of the chips. So what it's saying is the nose detects those molecules in the air and sends a message to your brain going, hey mate, we're in KFC drive-through, we're about to have some awesome chips. So what your brain does is your brain sends a message to your mouth and you start salivating. And if you remember from the digestive system stuff, saliva is very important for breaking down food and moisture. Remember, saliva also contains enzymes that break down glucose. So what it's doing is your brain is telling your body to get ready because we're about to eat. So that's how all these are connected. Again, this is another flow chart. So if you like flow charts, you can use that as well. Ears, hearing. So the air inside your ear canal vibrates, causing the eardrum to vibrate. So you've got an eardrum here, if you guys can see the picture. So this part here, that is your eardrum. So that's what vibrates. There are 3 tiny bones known as the ossicles in your middle ear, and they receive the vibration and they pass it to so these things here. 1, 2, 3. Those are the 3 muscles that vibrate and send the message. In your cochlea here, there are tiny hairs that detect this and send the message to your brain via the auditory nerve. So remember how I said there's auditory receptors? The auditory nerve will send the message to your brain going, this is what I'm hearing. That is the ears. We've got, and that's it. So hopefully you guys have a good understanding of the different sensory organs in your body. Make sure you know the receptors and what they detect, and make sure you upload that video after you've done this. All right, I'll see you guys soon.